Now, joining us at the roundish table this week, Tom Switzer, editor of The Spectator Australia and research associate at the United States Study Centre at the University of Sydney. Tom, welcome.
Hey.
Now, we heard earlier from Boris Epstein, who was showing just what a professional spinner he was about Mitt Romney's gaffes. More objectively speaking, how damaging was it? How bad? It wasn't a great week for him.
It wasn't a great week if you judge it by the headlines, but in Washington, as you both know, a gaffe is when a politician inadvertently tells the truth. And I think that all things considered, that's the best possible spin you can put on Mitt Romney's trip. He was telling the truth in many respects wherever he went. The problem was that in diplomacy, you've got to be very delicate and you can upset sensitivities in foreign capitals very easily.
But very indelicate, suggesting that the Palestinians, because of some cultural inferiority, earn less money as a result.
Sure. His point there, I think, is actually based on Dan Senor. You may remember Dan Senor. He was the chief spokesperson for the Coalition Provisional Authority in Baghdad in the aftermath of the downfall of Saddam Hussein. A young guy, only in his early 40s, well-known neoconservative in Washington. He's author of a book on this very question. That's where he got that from. And I think he was trying to emphasise the role that Israelis' culture of innovation and entrepreneurship is, particularly since the Netanyahu reforms of the 1990s, one of the main differences between Israel and Palestine.
I've got absolutely no doubt that as far as gaffes and stuff go, it makes no difference for the election what happens in July in England. But my question is, do world leaders care about this kind of stuff? Do they think to themselves, this is an example of the kind of diplomacy and the kind of operation that Mitt Romney is going to run if he's president? Do they take note, or they just don't care?
Well, I think that if there's a consistent pattern of gaffes, it is disturbing. But on this question of gaffes, I mean, what he said in London in the lead up to his trip to London, I think again was a bit overstated. Most Londoners have been saying the same thing for the last few months. A travelling politician from America shouldn't be saying these things. So that's where he's stuffed up. On the question of Israel and the where the capital is, whether it's Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, again, we have to put these things in context. In 2008, Barack Obama, as a candidate, said the same thing, that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, undivided. In 2004, John Kerry said the same thing. And believe it or not, in 1992, Bill Clinton also said the same thing. And in 1999, believe it or not, Senator John Kerry lambasted in a letter to Bill Clinton for not moving the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So I think this has been lost in the debate. Obviously, these gaffes aren't good, but that particular one was a bit overstated because, other candidates have said the same thing. And indeed, if you look at it, just quickly, Chaz, if you look at Jerusalem, in many respects, it is a capital of Israel. Yeah. I mean, that's where the Israeli parliament is, it's where the presidency is based, it's also where the courts are based.
I was going to ask on this particular issue, because as you say, every candidate always says it. Is there anything the American president can actually do at all to influence where the capital of Israel is, or is it just a symbolic thing?
I think it's symbolic, and in many respects, you have to remember the Israel lobby is a very powerful lobby force in the United States, and Romney would have got a lot of prominent endorsements from prominent Jewish people, both in America and overseas. That can't be dismissed. And indeed, Barack Obama and other candidates have done the same thing. But ultimately, I don't think these so-called gaffes are going to really hurt him terribly. Middle America is more concerned on domestic issues at the moment.
Beyond the sabre-rattling rhetoric, the sort of talking tougher on Iran or talking tougher on missiles in Poland, missile defence shields and so on, was there any, you're an expert in this area, was there any kind of difference between what a Romney foreign policy and an Obama foreign policy has been?
Look, you make a good point. I mean, Romney is trying to distinguish himself from Obama by championing a more muscular, interventionist, idealistic foreign policy. But the problem, though, is that he hardly spends any time talking about foreign policy. He doesn't even have one senior foreign policy staff advisor, not one senior foreign policy advisor that travels around with him on the campaign. Wow. Little known fact. And the other thing to bear in mind is he's only given one foreign policy speech in 9 months. Now that is really a reflection that Romney thinks that foreign policy doesn't matter. And I think increasingly these days in America, politicians are placing less emphasis on foreign policy.
Are they right?
Well, I think it's fundamentally incompatible with the idea that America should impose its will and leadership across the globe. I mean, if America is to be a world policeman, they need to have debates about this, but Romney doesn't want to do that. He wants to be a hawk, but a cheap hawk, which is a real oxymoron.
Yeah, but so he's not saying, we'd put boots on the ground in Syria.
Absolutely not.
So he's not actually saying what we would do except just talk tough.
And I think even on Iran, John, you're quite right. Ultimately, what is the difference between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama? I think ultimately, although they express themselves in different ways, they will end up supporting a a policy of deterrence and containment, unless, of course, the Israelis act beforehand.
Well, this is an issue that we're going to take up some more on next week's program with Doug Feith, who was a prominent member of the Bush administration as well, to get his assessment of Obama and also look at possibilities for Romney. Let's get your thoughts, we've only got a couple of minutes left, about where this race is up to. We've passed the sort of the 100-day mark this week. It's 3 months next week. Everyone's kind of trying to sort of say, where are we up to? What do you think?
Well, I don't think we can be definitive until, or more definitive if that's possible, until Labor Day weekend, which is in early September. We've got the Republican convention in the last week of August in Tampa, and then the Democratic convention takes place in the first week of September in North Carolina, another swing state. So I don't think we can be really sure about where things stand. There's been a deluge of attack ads against Romney from the Obama and the Democrat team in the last month. I think that might explain why his poll numbers are very poor in some of those battleground states. But look, Mitt Romney is now outspending the president, and I think you should get ready for more attack ads in those battleground states coming from the Republicans. So this race has a long way to go.
How are Republicans feeling, do you think, about it, given that Mitt Romney was seen as such a weak potential nominee when they were looking at Santorum and others, and now suddenly he's incredibly competitive? I
think if you speak to most conservative Republicans, and especially Tea Party Republicans, they're very uneasy about Mitt Romney, but their great hope is that Obama will upset a lot of the independents. These are the crucial voters, and especially in those battleground states. And if the economy continues to deteriorate, we're going to get some important figures later tonight in a few hours' time for the June monthly figures. If that shows the economy is stuck in mud, and I suspect it will be, probably 8.2, maybe 8.1%, then that only helps Mitt Romney rally his base, but also win over crucial independents.
Well, of course, by this time next week, we'll know all about those July jobs figures, whether they're still stuck at 8.2 or whether they've managed to go down just a little.